All right, guys, we have the intro to the intro, so you know we're doing some cool stuff. I wanted to talk to y'all a little bit about this. This is a new sponsor. Yeah, we got a sponsor for the podcast, and it's none other than Bad Motivator Barrels. Go to badmotivatorbarrels.com. I'm going to set it down. Go to badmotivatorbarrels.com and find you a good barrel. Go to the checkout. You put coupon code SHAMAN5. And they'll give you 5% off that barrel. This is a limited time offer. We're going to run this for a little while and see how it works. These guys have really tight margins, so get it while you can. And also, they have a wait list of people trying to get the barrels. So get in there and get them before the holiday rush. That's why we're doing this a little early, so that you don't have to worry about the holiday rush. You're going to run out. And you're probably thinking, well, I'm not a craft distillery. I'm not a hypothetical whiskey maker. Why would I want one? Well, like I've said before, for one, they're cool as hell on the shelf. And they have different char levels, toast levels. They're doing all sorts of cool stuff with like old bourbon barrels and stuff like that. But why would you want one? Because if you're really into whiskey, part of that is changing whiskey and learning about it and stuff like that. So taking it and putting whiskey in another barrel and double oaking it or something like that is a really cool concept. So go to your local, there's a local distillery by you. I'm sure there is. Get some of their new make and fill one of these barrels and make your own whiskeys. Totally legal, nothing skirting the line there. So get you one of those, fill it up. It's super cool. Yeah, it takes a little time and effort and stuff like that. But if you're really into whiskey and you want to nerd out on it, that's the best way to do it. So again, go to badmotivatorbarrels.com at checkout. Make sure you put Shaman5 because you get 5% off that barrel. And I cannot thank Chris over at Badmo enough for taking a chance and sponsoring us. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all the listeners. And y'all have fun, be safe, and also stay tuned. The podcast is coming. It's a banger. I'm going to tell you right now, this podcast is going to be a banger. So until next time, keep your spirits up, guys. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Today we have a very special guest. Like always, we have Robert from Ironroot Republic. How's it going, Robert?
Going good. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. It's hot as hell, as you well know up there. What's your temperatures rolling at up there?
We've been thankfully under 100 the last few days, so we're just gonna hope we hold it down to upper 90s for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. We dipped down like one day, and then we jumped right back up. So it was like, okay, never mind. We're not going to do this. Okay, so in case the people that live under a rock don't know who you are, and of course, right when I start recording, my donkey outside starts braying every time I start recording. This is kind of like a thing now because he knows I'm in here.
You know.
Yeah. And tell our listeners, if they don't know what you guys are all about, kind of tell us what you do and any socials you want to promote. You can do them again at the end if you want, but just kind of give us a intro on you guys.
Yeah, we're from Ironroot Republic Distilling. We're a small family distillery. It's started by myself, my mother, my brother back in 2014. So we are, I guess, what is that? Geez, 9 years old now. Oh my goodness. I feel like we're old. It's man, not the new kids on the block anymore.
Right.
But yeah, did back in 9 years ago. We're up in North Texas, where basically if you drive north of Austin till you see Oklahoma and then you just hit the brakes, that's where we're at. So we're right on the Texas-Oklahoma border. So we're in a little town called Denison, Texas, which we'll get into why we ended up in the small town and everything, but and what's all behind that story here in a little bit. But so we specialize in making heirloom corn, pot still bourbons. We also do some brandies. We do a lot of blending in house and stuff like that. You stretching our blending chops a little bit the last couple of years. Just been having a bunch of fun, making really cool, really kind of putting our own spin on some traditional spirits.
That is really awesome. And just to let the listeners won't know, but the viewers will. I'm drinking on the Saints Alley Herald, finished in the Pinot. I can't say the word, and Armagnac cask. I can't say Pinot.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You know it.
Say
it.
Pinot de. It's Pinot de Charente and Armagnac are the two finishes on that one.
Anyway, and this is an obviously it's a pretty good bottle. And the issue is, and I've talked about this multiple times, is I'm a Texas boy, been here a long time, almost all my life, and I cannot get your product to save my soul because it hits Dallas and then it's gone. So, and I can't. I've been meaning to get up to the distillery since y'all have been open, but convincing my wife to make a 2-day trip to go up there, stay in a hotel, come, do all that, is a little bit difficult. I wanted to do it for my birthday, but that's fastly approaching, and I don't see it happening. So I will guarantee you I want to get there this year. So just look out for that.
Yeah, you just take care of it, don't you worry.
So tell us a little bit of backstory and kind of why you guys got into the industry and kind of why you're where you're at doing what you're doing. Kind of give us a little backstory on that.
Yeah, so I guess back in 2008, I was at a family reunion with my brother, mother, father, and we were eating at this little Thai food restaurant up in Spokane, Washington. And I was in college at the time. Brother, I think he was in grad school at the time at that point. But yeah, we wandered into this Thai food restaurant, had a great lunch, and it's in this little shopping center. We wander out of the Thai food restaurant, and literally like 2 doors down is this little tiny distillery. And we were like, a distillery? Been to wineries, been to breweries before, but had never been to a distillery before. So we're like, yeah, let's go and see what it's all about. And we walked in and just honestly immediately fell in love. The big, beautiful copper stills. That's an old distillery a big distillery now called Dry Fly Distilling up in Spokane.
Oh yeah.
But they had these beautiful copper stills, and my family's been in the copper industry for generations now. And so we like to joke it's in our, we've got heavy metals in the blood.
Yeah.
And so we were like, God, this is amazing. This is so cool. And then my dad joked with my brother and myself, was thinking, hey, when you guys retire, this is what you should do. You should just start a little family distillery. And we're like, yeah, that's something to be really fun when we retire. Fast forward a few years, I was getting ready to graduate from law school and decided I did not want to be a lawyer. But I decided to inform my family of this would be the Christmas dinner before I graduated in May. Because Christmas dinner, generally, no one's going to get too mad at the Christmas dinner table. So everyone tries to hold it together a little bit better. So I announced it, and my mom just went like dead silent, giving me the what in the world look.
Wow.
So my dad, trying to be the jokester, looked at me and was like, hey, does that mean you're going to go start that little distillery now? And I looked at him because I had no idea really what I was going to do. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That's exactly what I'm going to do. And, which was funny because we didn't drink a ton of whiskey at the time. We drank mainly brandies, cognacs, Armagnac, and a lot of wine. And I was like, yeah, no, that's what I'm going to do, having no idea what I was getting myself into. And my brother was like, well, if he's going to do it, I'm going to do it too. So he asked his wife if he could do it, because me, I was single at the time, no kids. Like, I was young and dumb, so I could eat ramen noodles all night long. Doesn't matter. My brother had a wife and a newborn, so he had a few more things he had to get the approval for. But his wife, Jessica, she said we can do it, but the only rule is we have to go back to Texas, because my brother, we were in St. Louis at the time, both of us for school, and but we both were originally from Texas. My brother was born in El Paso, went to elementary school in Corpus Christi, middle school, high school in Amarillo,
Wow.
undergrad in Sherman. So been
all over the place.
all over the state. Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, so we kind of just jumped into it. That spring break, mom and I went out to Kentucky, and we were going to do the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, but we went to the distillery called Starlight, which they've become fairly well known recently here. Ted, he's a phenomenal guy. The father, the owner of that place. If you ever get a chance to go, it's beautiful. It's big, giant farms and vineyards, gorgeous. Anyway, another sidetrack. But he took us aside. He was like, "Hey, if you guys are really wanting to start a distillery, you don't need to be going to the big distilleries. You need to go to small distilleries to see what it is that you're going to be doing." So we went and visited a bunch of small distilleries. Went to Vendome. Which was a really funny visit because we walked in, they asked us what type of still we wanted, and I had no idea what to even answer with that. So yeah, so super ignorant getting into this, but realized very quickly that I was like, oh my God, I have so much to learn. So basically that's what Jonathan and I did. We went, kind of ended up going around the country, interning different places, taking all the classes we could, reading everything we could, doing some small home distillation as well. Essential oils. So obviously, we wouldn't do anything illegal.
Absolutely,
Never,
absolutely.
ever. Yeah. Yes. Um, and ultimately, we fell in with a gentleman named Hubert Germain Raban. He's a master cognac distiller who was like he's a sixth or ninth generation distiller who decided he didn't want to just distill French grapes. And so he sold his family's land and moved out to California in the 80s and set up shop out there. And so we fell in with him and then his apprentice, Nancy Fraley, and just honestly kind of fell in love with the French approach to distilling, the kind of thoughtfulness that they go through, of why they do everything they do. And I mean, it was just something that kind of really spoke to us. And so we became, I guess, evangelists for that style of distillation, maturation. And then after a few years from that, we decided to kind of strike out on our own. So we were heading back to Texas to start the distillery. And I think it was funny that Hubert, when we were heading back, asked my brother kind of two questions, which was, one, what does Texas brandy taste like? And number two was, what does Texas whiskey taste like? And this is circa 2012 at this point.
Right.
And so you look at the answer to those two questions was, number one, there is no Texas brandy. Right. So Hubert, we're going to some grapes. We're going to use what you taught us, and we're going to make some Texas brandy. As far as Texas whiskey goes, I mean, we'd been coming back and forth between Texas and traveling around to different distilleries for a while, but we also did a little bit of an internship and hired the guys down at Balcones to kind of help us figure out Texas a little bit. Yeah. And so we had some experience with Balcones Baby Blue, because this was before they had even released single malt.
Right.
How far ago it was. And we had Garrison Brothers, some of their first stuff. And those two things, if you guys have ever had Baby Blue and Garrison Brothers, those two things don't taste anything alike. They're completely different from each other.
They couldn't be farther apart. Yeah.
Exactly. So the answer on that was to Bears. Again, we have no idea what the heck we're getting ourselves into. So my brother asked me, like, since there's no like long-standing tradition in Texas for us to kind of fall back on for whiskey production, Hubert, where would you start? And he said the most French thing he could have to us at the time, which was, just stick with the terroir and you'll be fine. And terroir, what it means is flavor of the land. So basically just told us, make it taste like Texas and you'll be fine, which is a bold statement to make in general. My brother actually joked back to him. He's like, I don't know if brisket flavored whiskey is really going to work out for us, but we were like, oh geez, where do we start with that? So that got us into looking at, historically, when you talk about terroir and wine production, you're really looking at a certain type of soil in a certain climate will make a grape taste a certain way. If you change either of those two things, change the way the grape tastes. So we're like, okay, well, let's focus on local agriculture and see where that gets us. So driving around North Texas, it was pretty easy. We, all around us, they grow corn. So we were like, perfect. With corn, we know we can make bourbon, we can make corn whiskey. but they already do a really great job of that up in Kentucky and in the Midwest. So how do we make those spirits, but like distinctively Texan, distinctively from our town, from Denison, where we're at? And so Jonathan was like, well, let's look back like historically, see if we can find, something that would give us some unique flavor to make it a little bit different. And ultimately, as we went back through a lot of the historical records on what was being grown in the area, we noticed that the names of the corn, after you got back like 30, 40 years, started changing. And we started seeing things like in 50 years ago, like you'd see like brown corns and red corns started popping up as some of the farmers growing. And we were like, oh, cool. We know that like with the balconies, the blue corn, that has a really unique, really different taste. So my brother wondered, well, I wonder if corn's a little bit like grapes in the fact if you use different species, you can get really different flavors. I mean, think about it. Chardonnay and Merlot, those are both grapes. They both make wine, but two don't taste anything alike. Yeah. So like, well, let's test it out. So it put us down this really crazy path of trying out different heirloom corns. Right. Like to this day, we've distilled 46 different species of corn. Okay. Always trying new ones. Actually, even work. Yeah, we've got so many different corns, and we can get into that a little bit too. Yeah, absolutely. On that. But yeah, no, I mean that just led us down this really kind of crazy, unique path of really different style of production. Right. From grain choices from there to focusing on traditional pot still, so not a pot still with plates, but an actual true pot still, which is not what you do with bourbon 99% of the time. No, right. And then looking at barreling and kind of aging in the unique climate that is Texas. Obviously the crazy heat that we're talking about. Yes. Really impacts the way they age. So yeah, I know. I mean, that's less down to kind of investigating in all those different areas. But yeah, kind of fun.
That's amazing. I mean, and the fact that you're trying to use the terroir around you to create a particular profile and if you guys have ever tried Ironroot, it does not taste like any of the other Texas whiskeys because it's their terroir. Whereas, like I tell everybody, Balcones has a distinct flavor. Andalusia has a distinct flavor because of the area that they're at. And these guys are really honing in on that terroir thing and using all these crazy types of corn, obviously. And I've been able to try a couple of the releases that you've had with some, the red corn and they all do a blue corn as well. How many? I mean, you said a lot, but like releases on that. How many have you done? All 40 whatever released out to the public, or is that just test batches?
We've done like full production batches with each of the corns. But what's crazy, what happens is that sometimes they'll get blended into some of the core. Sometimes they'll get released as single barrels. Sometimes they'll get put into a product we call esoteric, which has a lot of the kind of heirloom products on it. I mean, like when people come and do single barrel selections, generally there's at least one really unique corn within the barrels to select for people. Right. So there's not like, I mean, unless I guess we don't put it on the label typically, which I think that's something that we're going to start changing. Right. To let people know kind of specifics on some of these. The only other way to know would be just message us with your barrel number, and I can tell you what the mash bill was for that particular barrel. Right. But yeah, sometimes you get some corn super like corny is the best way to describe it. Yes. Like you're standing in a corn that are some that are it's kind of fun. Yeah. We're kind of cutting out a little bit, so I'm trying to. You're breaking up a little bit. I'm trying to not talk so you can. There you go. You're back. No, you were talking about corn and how you were using the. Okay. All right.
No, it's good.
Yeah, we have used every single one of those corn has been used in a product at some point. Whether that sometimes it gets blended into some of our mainline releases, sometimes there's single barrel releases that have it in it, and sometimes we do it in esoteric, which has all sorts of crazy stuff blended into it. So it's a really kind of unique line that we do on that one.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I've been able to try the esoteric. Obviously, I can't pick up a bottle, but I've been able to try it, and it's super. I don't want to say funky because it's not funky like you would think it would be, but like it's super. Like there's so much coming at you. It gets almost mushrooming at some point, real earthy. Then it gets real floral. It's like, what is going? Like, and it depends upon. I guess it depends upon the release, how much of the corn is in each batch. So each one is kind of like a grab bag. You're like, you don't know what you're going to get out of this one, but it's going to be good. That's for sure.
It's going to have some unique twists on it. Yeah. I'm never offended by the term funk. Again, to me, I'm a giant fan of like Springbank and stuff like that. So I like a little bit of fun. I love the high ester rums, like some of the Jamaican rums.
Yep.
I like to have a little bit of kind of funkiness to the spirit, if you will.
Yep,
So
absolutely. And like I'll say, this Saint's Alley, and I know this is a blend of different whiskeys and stuff like that. It has, to me, I don't know a whole lot about cognac or Armagnac or anything like that. I've had a couple, but nothing too fancy. But it gives me an almost great vibe on it. But then also like this corny sweetness as well going through it. So it's a really interesting approach. And also these are ones that you can actually find if you guys are around in a Total Wine or something like that. You might be able to find one of them, which is nice. Which is nice. At least you can have a sample of it. I was able to procure a couple of bottles when we went up for the Texas Whiskey Festival. I was able to go to the local in Bee Cave. They had a local, I think it was a Total Wine or a Specs, and they had a couple of your bottles there, and I was like, got them, they're mine. So but yeah, so you said something about Denison. Why did you pick Denison out of the rest of Texas, let's just say?
So Denison has this really crazy history that I'll go into it with you, but ultimately, yeah. So Denison, back in the late 1800s, there's a gentleman who lived in our town. His name was T.V. Munson. He was a viticulturist. So he was a guy who studied basically growing grapes. That's what he was doing, which at that point in the U.S., there wasn't a real giant, robust wine industry. In fact, at that point, a lot of what they were still trying to do was figuring out how to grow winemaking grapes in the United States, because the native grapes from North America, while they're fine for making jellies and jams, aren't super great at making traditional tasting wine. So the Europeans, when they came over, they started bringing their own grape varietals to plant here so they could make their traditional wines, which was all fine and good, except for the fact that they had no resistance to any of our plant diseases or bugs that we have here in North America. So as they would plant them, generally they'd last a few years and they would die off, which for wine production, that's not great, because you need the plants to grow for 3 years before you can start using the grapes to make wine, which generally even longer is much better, obviously. So the people at that time were trying to find out how to kind of fix that solution. So T.V. Munson, one of these early viticulturists, kind of went down 2 different paths. The very first path he went down was trying to breed European grapes and American grapes together to create a new grape that would be highly resistant to all the things he wanted it to be resistant to and produce really great fruit for wine production, which is a really great thought. But it's much harder to accomplish that goal than one would like. Ultimately, I think he created 180 different grape varietals. 40 of them they still have at the local viticulture school in their little test vineyard there. But they're all, or basically most of them, are what I like to call Frankenstein grapes. They are quite crazy. The goofiest one, my favorite, is called Green Giant, and you'll get grapes that you'll get about 4 grapes to a bunch, and the grapes are almost the size of my fist.
Holy crap.
They're big, and the seeds are really big in there too. The grape tastes terrible, but it's a grape that exists. That's kind of goofy and fun. Just kind of crazy things they were doing over the years. Ultimately, he ended up going back to the drawing board, and what he ended up doing is he noticed that there was some native grapes from in Texas that grew in very similar pH soils to those in France, but they're way better at handling drought conditions. They're way better with the bugs. In fact, the bugs, especially this little tiny aphid that causes grapes problem called phylloxera, hates these Texas grapes. It won't really touch them. And so what he ended up doing is because the area where they have the biggest issue with the grapes is in the root systems. And so he theorized that if they were compatible, he could actually graft the French grapes on top of these Texas grape roots, and he'd be able to solve most of the issues.
Wow. And
lo and behold, he was able to get them to start growing, and it kind of took off. And so at that time, the folks out in California got hit by phylloxera really badly because they were growing mostly Spanish grapes early on. So TV Munson and a couple of other American viticulturists started giving and helping the guys out in California by providing these new French grapes with these Texas grape roots on them. And they were able to get them to grow. And that's when you saw kind of California start really kind of taking off with growing like Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and Merlot and a lot of the, again, your more traditional French varietals. So while all this was going on, somebody from the United States thought it'd be a really great idea to transfer a lot of plant material back over to Europe, but not put it through quarantines or anything like that. They just ship it there, which unfortunately for everybody, it had some bugs that were hanging on with those plants, and they got over to Europe and had no natural predators and kind of went to town. Phylloxera ultimately was the 4th blight to hit. When it hit France, it was ultimately the most devastating. Phylloxera wiped out between 60 to 70% of the French grapes. You're talking like Bordeaux, Burgundy, Cognac, Champagne, all were essentially decimated, which, as you can imagine, freaked them out quite a bit. So they kind of started scouring the planet, and through the Smithsonian, they got put in touch with this crazy dude named TV Munson, and next thing you know, he's shipping them Texas grape roots. And to this day, most of the grapes in the world, except for in South America, are grown on the tops of the descents of these Texas grape roots. So that's crazy. That's where Ironroot comes from. It's the iron grape roots from Texas that helped save the French wine industry. Ultimately, it led to TV Munson being named to the French Legion of Honor. There's a little statue of him in Cognac even. And Cognac became sister cities. So what was cool is after we set up shop, we got trained by Hubert and Nancy. We set up shop in Denison. And then now every few years, the mayor from Cognac and several of the master Cognac distillers will come over to Denison in a pilgrimage, which is really kind of fun. So they come hang out with us. We've been there. And then we get invited back over to France. So we get to go hang out with them. So that's how I've gotten the opportunity to go over to Cognac and actually distill in Cognac. So I've had a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That right there, that's a big deal. Like the fact that you guys are doing, and I know it's not just you, but like you guys are creating a product and you're able to go over there and kind of see the way that they do it. Because I know coming from a quote unquote brandy background, learning from a brandy person, and I feel like you guys take that finesse in the bottle. That to me, that's a huge honor to be able to go over there and actually, run a still in that area where they are creating this awesome stuff. That's a big deal, man. Wow. I did not know that. That you just blew my mind right there. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's been a really fun past few years for sure. And I think we're going back next year actually to go again.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when you go over there, obviously you're distilling brandy, but is it a specific type, like made just, like kind of made for y'all's region, or how do you do it? You just go over there on a normal business day?
Yeah. So we've got some friends over there now through building these relationships. And when we went over, it was literally to help them make cognac. And so for their houses, so I'd show up at 5 a.m. and we'd start distilling and clean out the still from the day before and get it rocking and rolling, and then make the cuts and then shut it down that night. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Especially when they start handing like, hey, do you think we should cut it? I'm like, I mean, all right, here we go.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. This is y'all's stuff. It's not mine. I don't know where we're at.
Typically do. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun, and it was fun going through a lot of guidance with them. And cognac and brandy production is, I mean, there's a lot of similarities to whiskey production, but there's also some really big differences, which is kind of fun of kind of looking and taking kind of steps from that and working it into our own processes, again, with our own little tweaks of what we do.
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And getting to go through their cellars and taste all sorts of crazy old stuff. One of the houses we went to, we ended up tasting the oldest thing we tasted was from like 1880.
Shut up.
Yeah, it was crazy, man.
Like, what do you do when you taste something that's that old? Like, I mean, I've had some pretty old whiskeys in my years, but nothing that old. Like, good Lord, we're not talking 100 whatever year old stuff. That is crazy. What could you tell that it was that old? I mean, like,
I mean, if you had like blinded me and asked me to name how old it was, would have named 1880? No, I would not in a chance in that. What was cool is it definitely was unique. When it was cool because it was pre-phylloxera, so it was before you had the introduction of the American grapefruit, the Texas grapefruits. So there was definitely some uniqueness. There was a little bit of difference to it. You could see, because we not only did we taste 1880, we tasted basically basically a cognac from every single decade from 1880 to 1950s that night. And it was cool to go through and see, one, you do have variation just based on year from how the crops do that year. There's big changes there, but you could see kind of like differences in cutting and stuff and how they were producing it. It was really, really interesting. And the freakiest one is the one they said they'll never sell was one that we had that was like, I think it was 1942 or 3. And they said, yeah, this one was not harvested by the French. The harvest was done by the Germans.
Oh,
yeah. And you're sitting there and you're like, nope, this is, and they're like, we're never going to sell this. This is not going anywhere. Like, we wanted to, start moving once to destroy it, but also they want to keep it there to remember what happened. It's so interesting of like kind of where that took place in history for them. But it also really kind of freaky at the same time. They're like,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, I'm guessing it was pretty decent. I mean, even though,
to be honest, it wasn't my favorite one. I can tell you that.
Okay.
That one, it definitely wasn't the favorite of the day. Okay. But neither was the 1880. I think the 1912 one was really cool. But that one was super like blue cheesy and mushroomy.
Oh, that sounds good.
In brandy, you get what they call rancio, which is this kind of again blue cheesy type flavors you can get sometimes, and it's super highly sought after by brandy nerds, but really unique. That one had it was crazy how blue cheesy that particular
wow. Okay, so like you're chasing like an octomore. Let's just say like that time. Okay so like I don't know my way around brandy, like I've already said, but like it seems like it parallels very well with the whiskey culture as well. Where was I going with that? I'm sorry, I got off track, but oh, it's gone. Sorry. Continue telling the story. So hold on. This is what I was going to say. So in one day you had, from this age to this age, you had like 20 different drinks in one day? Like, how can you even remember that day?
I mean, it's samples. You're not like having
Yeah.
full drink or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're looking at it was probably a third of an ounce is probably what you're looking at as far as size, because they're pulling it literally when the cognacs, when they start getting that old, generally after like 60, 70 years, most of the time they're pulling them out of barrel at that point, and they're going to go they call demijohns, which are big glass vases. So not that that's done with everyone, but a lot of them, they get enough oak, they don't want to see any more evaporation, just like in with Scotch, that if it gets too, there's a chance when it gets super old, it could get too low, and it gets too low, call it whiskey anymore. So yeah.
Like I was able to try like I think, I don't even know, don't even quote me on the year. It was like a 35 or 40-year-old Lafroig, and it was right at 40%. I think they actually, I don't know. Anyway, they might have flubbed the numbers a little bit, but like once you get that long in a barrel, like it's not, the barrel's done its job. The barrel's just a holding place for it, especially with a second use or something like that barrel. And I'm guessing most of the brandies are second use or even third use. Is that correct?
Yeah, so with cognac, what happens with cognac is they do kind of a progressive aging, typically. And so most of the time what they do is right off the still, it's going to be put into what they consider a new barrel, which is generally between brand new and about 3 years old is what they consider a new barrel. And they'll go into that barrel for the first year, maybe 2 years, depending on its use. After that, because in cognac, they go through a process called élevage, which means to raise. And so what they're going to do is every year they're going to go through and they're going to taste every barrel in their warehouse. Because what's crazy about cognac, even though cognac is this massive worldwide spirit, it's not really produced in big, giant distilleries for the most part. I think the biggest distillery in cognac is Martell, which Martell is about the size of balcones, if that makes sense. So like the big houses, Cavassier, Hennessy, what all these guys do is they actually buy their cognac from small farm producers. In Cognac, which is a region that's smaller than Dallas-Fort Worth, there's 6,000 distilleries.
Oh my God. Okay.
Which is more like 2.5 times the amount of distilleries in the United States. Yeah, which that puts it. So most of the farmer, they're not producing 1,000 barrels a year or anything like that. They're going to produce 100 barrels a year or 200 barrels a year. And what they're going to be going through is every year they're going to be tasting through all of their barrels that they have in their rickhouse, and they're going to make adjustments to those barrels. They might a lot of times the earlier vintages, what they'll do is they'll taste them once they get enough oak on them. So again, after that first year, typically they're going to dump it all out, blend it together, the same vintage, water it down slightly, and then recast it in older barrels. And so they'll progressively move into older barrels, and they're slowly going to bring it out, because what's crazy with cognac is they start entry proof super high. Their entry proof is generally about 140 proof, about 70% alcohol.
Yeah, that is.
And so, and so they're going to bring it down slowly throughout the years, down into, again, typically you're looking in the between 40 and 50% typically.
So in saying all that, and I know you being I'm gonna say it, a whiskey nerd like the rest of us, have you thought about doing something similar to that, or are you doing something similar to that? Because I know you've got a couple of hazmats out there on the market. They get sold out as soon as they come on the market, so you can't get one. But have you thought about kind of like playing off that and doing something similar to that? Obviously, it'd be a distilled spirit specialty because you're going from new oak to used oak to used oak to used oak. But have you thought about something like that?
So actually, we do our own version of that with our whiskeys, except for some. So with élevage, really what it's looking at, it's as I said, it means to raise. So it is looking at barrels that they're each like a unique kid.
Right.
and they're going to be looking at that barrel, and they're going to make adjustments to that barrel depending on what that barrel's needs are, or what that vintage's need is in the case of cognac. There are some single barrel cognacs, but it's not super typical on that end. But I digress on that. So it really is, it's looking at, you might move barrel from a wet cellar into a dry cellar. There's a lot of things about changing the conditions to kind of benefit the best of that particular barrel, if depending on, is it a spicy barrel, is it a sweet barrel, is it an herbal barrel, what is that, what type of child is this? Yes. And then the parenting you need to do to kind of raise that kid to be the best version of itself. Okay. So obviously the rules are quite a bit different in the US, especially for bourbon production. So we can't pull bourbon out of barrel, mess with it, put it back in another barrel, because then, as you mentioned, it's not bourbon anymore. Right. It goes back to American whiskey at that point. So what we do instead of pulling whiskey physically out of barrels or blending vintages, we'll go through about every 4 months, because the weather in Texas is way more dynamic than France. So with the way more on top of barrels than they are. So about every 4 months, we're going to go through and we'll taste every barrel in the warehouse. Once they hit 1 year of age. Before 1 year, we're going to let them kind of do their thing. Because typically we actually barrel at 125 proof typically. Mm-hmm. Which the reason for that is we like pulling that tannin really early, whereas a lot of the guys in Kentucky, they pull it late. We pull it early so we have more time to soften it once it's in the spirit. So it's a little bit different philosophy on that, but that's a whole other thing I could digress about. So we'll put it in. We're going to taste all the barrels. We're going to start looking at every 4 months. We're going to start taking notes on the barrel. What flavor profiles are developing? Is it becoming a spicy barrel? Is it an herbal barrel? Is it a barrel that we're looking at based on flavor profile, destined to be a 3-year-old? Is it going to be a 5-year-old? Is it going to be a 10-year-old? How is it cut off the still? A lot of those things will determine some of those, how we look at the barrels. And then from there, we're going to make adjustments to the barrel. We may move a barrel from a cooler part of the warehouse to a warmer part of the warehouse, or if it's super hot and they're getting super tannic, sometimes we'll move them from the outer part to the inner part to cool them off a little bit. But my favorite technique to do, based off of the kind of French technique, is actually go back in and change the proof of the whiskey while it's aging. Okay. So especially with the barrels on the outer part of the warehouse, we don't pull the whiskey out, but we literally will put water in the barrel. Okay. So the outer part of the warehouse, where we get the most temperature fluctuations, that's where we get the barrels with the most structure, but they also tend to become the most tannic and most spicy just from the oak tannin. So when they start building that up too high, we'll go back and we'll actually drastically drop the proof in barrel. We might take it from 127, 128, wherever it is at that point, and drop it back down to 115, or 110, or 120, depending on what we're tasting and what we're seeing. And we're going to do it. And the reason why we do that is because, and the reason why the French do it as well, is that different components of the oak are water soluble and different ones are alcohol soluble. You're right. So tannin is alcohol soluble. So the higher the proof, the faster, the more intensely you're going to pull tannin into the cask. So when we get guys that already have a bunch of oak, already have a bunch of tannin, we want to drop them quite a bit. So it gives time for the tannins already in the barrels to soften and oxidize, but also to encourage the barrel to pull out a little bit more of the wood sugar to help balance out what's going in the barrel a little bit more. But typically on those guys, we sometimes will let them keep going because we want them to provide structure for the barrels. That's where sometimes the guys that can handle it, the ones that, they're getting up there in proof, but they're not getting overly tannic, they're not getting overly spicy. Sometimes we'll let them keep going, and that's where those hazmats come from that you're talking about. That occasionally, some of the guys, they're great, they're perfect the way they are. And what's crazy about some of those guys that they don't really like a lot of water. Yeah. You put a lot of water, sometimes they go flat. So it's where, why make the barrel worse? Obviously, it's what it wants to be, and you're gonna let that kid kind of spread his own wings, and so we'll send him out there as a hazmat. So,
and that's something that I really that you've just came out with, and I don't know if this is something you've talked about multiple times, but calling it a child, because it is, because you have to baby the barrel, you have to nurture it, and you have to let it be what it's going to be. Because you know, you can, like you say, you can put water in it. You can pull it out of that barrel and be like, no, that barrel's no good for you anymore. You know, like you can do that, but kind of letting the individual barrel turn into whatever it's going to be, maybe tweaking it here and there as needed, and then going back and doing the blending game, and kind of like creating a profile. Okay, here's our X. We need to figure out how to get to that, and we got 145 and a 92 that we got to mix together and make that work. Like that to me is really interesting, that y'all are just kind of letting them be, but yet still babying them in a way to where, like, if you need a little water, I'm going to add a little water to you. If you don't, and like sampling each barrel, which I know is an arduous task, and good Lord, you have to drink more whiskey, and that sucks. I'm sorry for you. Like it hurts my heart that you have to drink whiskey all day and then be like, oh no, this is my job. But at the same time, like being able to get the barrel what it needs to produce the best product, that to me is a big deal. Where a lot of people, and I'm not shitting on the big distilleries, the big six. I'm not gonna shit on them because they're doing a thing. But like, like it's 125 in, it's 125 out. Whatever it is, it is what it is. And 6 years we pull it no matter what. Like that to me.
And to be
go ahead.
Do what we do. If they tried to do what we do and taste every barrel, they'd all be dead.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you're tasting 50,000 barrels a day, like there's no way you could do that. Like you're gonna die 3 times over by the time you get through it. I get that. Like so in it, like in your warehouse, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. How many barrels are we talking about that you would have to try in a particular day if you were doing a session? How many barrels would that be?
I mean, you're looking at 60 to 80 barrels you'll taste through. Now again, when we're tasting, we're spitting. We're not gonna. You can't, even with small sips, you can't taste 80 barrels. You'll be schmackered by the time you're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
We get in. You're looking at 7 or 8 in the morning. We're gonna start, and then by noon, we'll be done by noon. The later day you get, the more tired your palate's gonna get, and then after 80 samples, your palate's gonna be pretty spent as well. I'm just tasting, but yeah.
And I learned this from Alan Bishop, which love him or hate him. He has told me that, like, he was told when he was coming up in the game, like, he smoked cigarettes and drink coffee. Well, that's his zero to reset on a whiskey or whatever. So like they tell him, don't stop drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes. Like, do what you got to do to get you back to zero. Like I always tell people, smell the inner crook of your arm to reset to zero when you're tasting whiskeys. But like when you're tasting that many whiskeys, you got to be on your game the whole time. And like if you're a smoker, you need to smoke. If you're a coffee drinker, you need to do that. So is there a particular practice that y'all do when you're doing a big tasting event, like when you're going through all those barrels? Is there something y'all do as kind of like I hate to say a ritual, but like a thing that y'all do independently, and maybe it's different for each person, that y'all do to kind of like reset your palate to where you're like, I mean, because you try one thing and it's like super high proof, it can blow your palate easy. Is there something y'all do to kind of reset back to zero?
Yeah. So generally what we're going to do as a team, Alan's 100% right on this, that everybody has their own zero. Now smoking, again, you're going to get, Nancy's going to start getting after you on smoking. But coffee, that type of stuff, tea. Because what's crazy about too, even the people that like swear that you have to be absolute zero, not wear any deodorant, not brush your teeth, or whatever the heck they're saying that you need to do. When my discussion with those people is that we're also looking at whiskey of how people, when they're tasting, are going to taste it. And most people are having tea. Most people are going to have coffee. And so it's okay to, especially if that's your norm, to use that as your norm and as your base. Just because, again, the people that you're blending to, it's a lot of what they're going to be tasting as well. And it's going to be where their palates are coming from. Now, that being said, everybody's palate's different. And so as a team, you have to, that's a lot of the training that we do as a team together, is coming up with similar vocabulary, making sure that when we're talking about things that we try to talk about them, even though our experiences are different, having the same type of vocabulary within our team so that we understand what each other is talking about. Because there's some days that some people are going to be on and some people aren't. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we do when we start every day. We actually have what we call our it's Harbinger 115, but it's going to be our base whiskey. So it's a whiskey that we all know really well, that we've experienced every day, all day with that particular whiskey. We know what it tastes like, and go in there and taste that, one, to warm up your palate, to tell your body, hey, we're about to get into some high proof stuff, but also for you to be able to check yourself on, hey, how am I tasting today? How am I nosing today? Where am I at? And that's the zero. And again, if we get through 20 or 30 whiskeys and tasting some of the tasting notes or something seems off, that's when we'll go back and have everyone check again, check that base whiskey. Because sometimes just by tasting different things can skew your palate quite a bit. And so that's, you do it. We also have little coffee beans to smell. Smelling your elbow pit is a really great way to do it. Little unsalted crackers is also another really great thing to do to kind of help reset.
Yeah. And so I'm going to caveat off of that, but like, I know you just recently brought Emma on, and she's doing some amazing stuff. She used to be with, I'm not going to say who it was, but she was with another distillery, and she came over to y'all, and now she's loving life, as she should. And I mean, they can't even use the name that they're using as of right now, but
in the day, and then
yeah. And I mean, she's an amazing person, and I know you guys know that. So what does she bring to the table? And I need to talk to her personally, but like, what does she bring to the table for y'all as like moving forward in y'all's kind of game that y'all are doing?
Emma's really cool, and one that she's got a lot of experience at a lot of different places. She's been and seen a lot of different production methodologies, even just within Texas, as you were mentioning.
Yeah.
She's experience on the blending side. And so what's fun is that, Jonathan and I and Mom and have all come up kind of through our own kind of teachings through Nancy and through Bear. And so we have had a very singular way of doing things. And it's really fun bringing in somebody that has done things differently and has different elements, and be able to talk to her about, show her kind of what our traditional way of doing things is, and then look at, hey, what have you done? What is it that you've liked? What do you like about this? What do you like about what you did previously? And it's fun to kind of play off all those experiences. I think every time someone that comes onto the team, they're bringing that perspective, that outside perspective, is always insanely helpful, because that's one thing that we've always prided ourselves on. It was kind of our philosophy from the beginning, when I knew absolutely nothing, was, I know nothing, I need to go find the best people and learn from the best people. And that's, which I haven't met everybody, I haven't studied under everybody. And so that's one of the really beautiful things about bringing in someone with a lot of experience like Emma, was that she's got a lot of experience from a lot of really great people in the industry, and being able to talk to her and adapt some of her, what she's learned over the years, and then also have her look at what we do. And it's fun to get that outside perspective on that. Plus, she's got an amazing palate. And she's been just a really great asset for the team, because as we're expanding, as we're growing, as mentioned, you can only taste so many things. You can only, before you're spent, and to have someone else on the team that you can trust, like Emma, is absolutely invaluable. What's been fun about, again, the team that we've added on this year. So we went from literally just Mom, Jonathan, myself, and Ashley, and Josh being down in Austin, to now everybody that we've added. We've added Emma. We've got Alex, so pharmacist that came in. It's very fun to see.
Yeah.
approach. We've got Jeff, who's an engineer who, he came in and made tools to fix and repair barrels and to build barrels, and he guy's amazing and awesome. We've got Chris Trevino, Liquor Hound on YouTube,
Absolutely.
who does a lot of blending work for us. He does a lot of management for the Saints Alley barrels. I know, and it's fun because he himself has a ton of different experience in really different areas from what we have had. So for us, it's always about bringing people in that are going to bring more to the team. Some things we want to teach people, but it's just as valuable to bring people in to learn from other people. So,
yeah. And that to me is the biggest thing. Like, y'all are able to take what somebody brings to the table and put it all in together and be like, okay, we're going to absorb this, and this is going to be a part of our, our mission statement that, like, hey, we're going to do this. And the fact that, and I don't know if this is, to be talked about, the fact that Josh Galladay, which I've known Josh for a long time through the Whiskey Tribe, Whiskey Vault, all that stuff, like, the fact that he literally just moved, he's like, I'm gonna move up there with y'all, and him and Gretchen, the fact that they moved up there, and like, I'm guessing they're full time with y'all. Is that correct?
Yeah, Josh is full time. Gretchen's still working for the state, still doing her thing. But yeah,
right. No, I get that. I mean, you got to make some outside money. I get that, but like, Josh has been my boy from a long time ago. He's been a fanboy of y'all since the beginning. He was able to get me a bottle of Icarus back when it was the old bottle, bottle that wouldn't fit on the shelf, and he's my bro from way back. But like, the fact that like y'all are keeping it so tight and such a family environment, that to me, like I've seen y'all's posts on Instagram and stuff like that, like, where your dad's like in the still house and he's screwing shit up. He is. But anyway, he's out there, and Mama Marcy, she's out there preaching to all the women of whiskey, and I love it. I literally love it that y'all have turned a fledgling distillery into a Texas juggernaut. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. And you know where I'm going. The whiskey of the year? What? Did I hear that? Did I hear that right? Whiskey of the year? Huh. Let's talk about that. Because, we're winding down. I mean, unless you want to talk, we can do a Joe Rogan if you want to. I don't care. But, whiskey of the year? Like, how does that, is that it?
This is the one. Which was crazy. So the batch that won, this was 2019 B. For anybody out there that's got some older bottles of ours, it was fun because it was a release. It honestly wasn't the largest release. I think it was 7 barrels. We released it in July of 2019. Then submitted it to the awards because you have to submit stuff in August, and then they get announced in March. So what's crazy is like when this guy won, like we didn't have any of it left at the distillery. So I had to go find a bunch of stores that had some bottles just like sitting in the back and go kind of try to find some. So that's where I finally was able to, someone found a bottle in Kentucky. And that's why I have a bottle.
Holy shit. That is amazing. Like the fact that y'all won whiskey of the year, correct?
Bourbon of the year.
Bourbon of the year. Like, and we're talking against every Kentucky, like it literally threw the whole whiskey world upside down, because like this little, and I don't mean this any hate by this, but this little fledgling distillery out of Denison, Texas,
20 barrels a year.
Yeah. Like this little fledgling distillery coming out making the best bourbon of the year. Like that doesn't happen. And it did.
No.
And like I want to applaud you for that. Not only for that, but like I haven't tasted that one because you can't get it anymore and it sucks. But like the fact that y'all are keeping it in house and like Mama Marcy's on every post and like everybody's like you keep it so in house, everything you're doing, and the Saints Alley stuff is like blowing up, and like the fact that y'all are able to do all of these things and still keep it true to what Ironroot Republic is a huge deal. And like, okay, we haven't even talked about damn sleight of hand. Let's go there. Let's go there. I know this is a whiskey podcast, but we've talked a lot about brandy, and I got to taste at the last year's Bachelor's Ball, and I hope you're gonna. I know you're gonna be at the next one here next month. Was it next month? I mean, we're all tomorrow's September, so like literally next month.
Josh, Jonathan, and Chris are all coming down for it. So
it hurts my heart because I'm working the tower. I'm working the tower that night. Anyway,
that weekend, so
it's okay. It's okay. Hey, it's fine. But like, let's talk about the sleight of hand, because that to me, like I said, a lot of times I'm not a brandy guy, but talk about that sleight of hand, because that'll change you for sure.
So sleight of hand, we did 2 releases of it for the 150th anniversary of Denison. And so what we ended up doing is we were like, we've been making brandy since the very beginning, and we wanted to do something that kind of honored this kind of historic connection between Denison and Cognac. And so we got got with some friends over in Cognac and procured some high proof 10-year-old Cognac, imported it, brought it in, and we brought it here, and then we ended up blending it with some of our 8-year-old Chenin Blanc Texas brandy, and and ended up recasking it in some 40-year-old Cognac casks and let it continue aging together. So we had the very first release with a cask strength, which was like 120 something proof. It was beautiful and gorgeous. Absolutely. And then we've the second release that was right at basically 100 proof. That's because that's a little bit more traditional for brandy. 129 for brandy drinkers, 129 proof, so a little intense. For whiskey drinkers, right up our alley. Yeah. So got kind of the 2 different versions of it, but yeah.
I mean, and I got to try a sample of this at the Bachelor's Ball last year, and I will tell you, like, not knowing anything about brandy or anything like that, like, it blew my mind. The fact that they were able to make a distillate and mix it with another distillate and have it come out to be like this magical thing. Like, I can't even tell you the tasting notes on it, because like as soon as I tasted it, I was like, I had little wings and I was flying in heaven. Like, that's what it was. And that's where sleight of hand, like these guys are doing some voodoo is what they're doing. Like, they need to stop. But I will tell you for right now, if you can find any of their brandy, and I know we're all about whiskey, but like if you can find any of their brandy on the market, get it. It's going to be amazing. It's only at distillery. See?
Yeah.
See, you're not going to find it unless you go to the distillery. So, in saying all that, go to the distillery. It's a cool place. I've seen many a picture and video of people that I'm very envious of going to the distillery. I'm going up there. I promise. I'm going up there.
Okay.
But like, go up there, get a full ride, because y'all do gin, y'all do all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, we have a little bit of gin, a little bit of vodka that we do, and then obviously you've got the brandy, and then I mean, if you come up right now, I think there's 9 whiskeys to try at the distillery currently. So,
yeah, I mean, so you guys can kind of understand where we're coming at here. Like Ironroot is a force to be reckoned with, and if you haven't heard of them, now you have. And please just understand that they are changing the terroir of whiskey and making it a little softer, a little lighter approach. But yet you get that Harbinger 115, it's gonna kick your ass. I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna kick your ass. But at the same time, it's gonna like be like, it's okay. You're fine. You're fine. You know, you're gonna like it when you're getting your ass kicked. So talk about, I mean, before we go, because I don't want to keep you all night. Before we go, talk a little bit about your lineup, because we haven't talked about that. Talk a little bit about your lineup. If you want to talk about Saints Alley, that's fine. But like, talk about your main core lineup and kind of give everybody a thing of like what they can find, you know, out and about if they happen to come upon it.
So we have 4 whiskeys that we consider part of our core lineup. We've got number 1 that you were talking about, Harbinger 115. It's on the head, the old bottle, the new bottle looks a lot like this guy right here.
Yep.
And then we've got other than Harbinger 115 on the standard releases, we've got Promethean, which is 100 proof. It's basically the inverse blend of what Harbinger is. So we've got 4 core mash bills, and Harbinger focuses on 2 of them. Promethean focuses on the other 2, essentially. It's kind of how it works. That's on the Ironroot side. On the Saints Alley side, the 2 core are going to be the regular Saints Alley, which is a port and cognac finish at 100 proof. And then you're also going to have the Armagnac finish, my baby, which is 107 proof, called Herald. And so those are the 4 core whiskeys that we do. Outside of that, we do a lot of kind of fun special releases. We've got on the Ironroot side, we've got our corn whiskeys, which are going to be both Hubris, which is a purple corn whiskey at about 117, and Icarus, which you're a fan of that guy. This boy right here.
Absolutely.
That same whiskey, but aged in peated single malt casks and port casks. So super fun. So and then obviously we've got single barrels and tri-barrel that comes out every year as well on the Ironroot side. On the other side, we'll have special releases like the one that you had, the Saints side that's in Pinot de Charente and Armagnac finish. There's also our only rye out there, which we haven't even released the rye by itself yet, which is rye. It's the traditional MGP rye, 7 and 8 year old blended with some 6-year-old pot still rye from us. That's 60% rye. So we haven't released it yet. Blended those guys together and aged it in Tokai, which is a noble rot wine, kind of like Sauternes, but it's from Hungary. And it's
I think I have that in my little stash back there. I need to double check, but like, why have you not came out with just a rye from y'all? Like, I feel like rye is like, I don't know if it's a thing, but it's obviously been a thing for like 200 years. But like I feel like rye is the next step for y'all, because rye is a totally different grain that y'all can get into and just be like, hey, this is us doing a rye. Like,
nice. Yeah, I mean, every year we're doing, like, historically we did about 6 barrels of rye a year. Now we're doing, I think, close to 40 barrels of rye a year. Produce it. There's a few things we haven't released from the distillery yet that we've made. There's obviously the rye. There's single malt that we've made that's aging. That's
I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that.
We've done some small releases of an Irish, traditional pot still Irish style that we've done.
Yep.
That
was super good. That one was super good. So on the like, are y'all okay? I'm gonna say it like this. On the single malt, are y'all trying to do a peated single malt? Because I feel like in American single malt, there's not enough peat. Like, everybody's going real classic Highland, like super fruity and stuff like that, like Westland, Westward, all that. But like, I need some, like I was talking to Moose a while back. I mean, it's been a while back, a couple months ago. And that guy's like, we're all into the peat. They're starting to do American peat now. They're not getting the Irish peat. Like, is there a peated release coming out from y'all? Because I would beat my brains out for that.
A release? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think we have enough for a release. Is there some peated single malt aging at the distillery currently? Yes.
I need that
Is
in
it
my life.
old? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there'll be enough for a formal release of it. But we'll see. We'll see.
How about one bottle for me? Just one bottle, just for me.
Come up and visit. Come up and visit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, you're making me drive up there right now. All right, all right. So we're getting close to time. I mean, we can stay as long as you want. I mean, if you ain't got nothing else to do, it's fine. But so you've already won Whiskey of the Year. You've done all these things. You're making amazing brandies as well. Who would have thought? You're doing heirloom corn varietals. Like, what's in the future for Ironroot? I guess that's the thing I want to know. Like, what is coming up in the future that y'all are like I've had some of your corn stuff and it's amazing. Like, are y'all trying to take corn to the next level? Because everybody knows corn as like mellow corn and stuff like that. I wanted to have a corn whiskey that is like, oh man, this is amazing. Like, I've had the Still Austin red corn, and that's good.
Mhm.
And I've had like some of the other, like the blue corn from Balcones, and that's great. But like, are y'all doing something with a specific grain that's gonna take it to that next level? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all.
Here, the answer to that is yes. We've got a lot of ideas of what we want to do. One of the biggest things for us is looking at sustainability. One, on growing, it's looking at some of these old school heirlooms. It's working with different farmers, different corn scientists to get away from the CRISPR genetic choosing for corn and getting back to more traditional corns and creating corns that are for breeding corns essentially, and creating kind of a new corns for Texas that really focus on flavor profile, and working with different people from Texas A&M, working with people from Texas Tech on the development of corns for Texas specifically, because that's not really something that's really been done a whole lot with, especially on the really nailing down what grows best here, and to really start focusing on breeding and growing corns that have specific and different flavors, and then working on how those flavors are developed in different soil types. We talk about terroir a lot in winemaking. When it comes to whiskey, it's a very controversial topic, and working through that to show how non-controversial it really is, and how you can really use growing different grain and different grain varietals in different soil types to basically unlock different flavors. And that's a lot of what we're doing now. There's some really, really cool corns that we've been working on for experimental for this next year. Hopefully there's going to be some things that are going to be changing the game when it comes to corn. Using it for bourbon production and for corn whiskey production in and of itself. But yeah, that's the next kind of step for us, is going that next step and really working with the corn, working with the farmers, and developing really unique different corns that have the best kind of flavor varietals from these old heirlooms that unfortunately don't yield a lot, or they are really susceptible to bugs, or it's because one of the things that for us is looking at not only all the great things for us flavor wise, but also looking at for farmers to be growing it, making sure that they're making sustainable livings, and so making sure that the crops are yielding properly, that they're not draining the soils too much. So there's a lot of things that we're working on a kind of variety of different topics to not only make what we do more sustainable long term, but also to make the best corn whiskey that you've ever tasted. That has these cool and crazy flavors. I mean, there's some of the corns that we're starting to see come out of this program are crazy. Some of them have like dark chocolate and coffee notes to them just in the corn itself, not fermented, distilled like what we're seeing right now, but just the corn itself. And these are naturally occurring stuff that's really amplifies the fruit profiles of some of the corns. Some of the, I mean, there's so many crazy things that's coming on this end by working and breeding corn and getting kind of making sure that the whole system it works the best it can and makes amazing whiskey. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, last question before we go. Is there any more of the Dorito whiskey left for me to sample?
Well, to be fair, it's Dorito and Beaver Nugget whiskey, right?
Okay, no, Beaver Nugget. I'm sorry.
And for Beaver Nuggets. Yes, there is still some at the distillery.
Okay, please save some for me. You see this face, you know who I am by now. Like, please save 2-ounce sample. That's all I need. Like the fact that Jesse went up there with y'all and did this, I'm gonna say stupid ass because it was, the stupid ass thing. I mean, if y'all haven't seen it, please go on Jesse's channel and look at the things that they did. They distilled Doritos and Beaver Nuggets and turned it into a whiskey. Anyway, long story, but at the same time, like y'all are amazing, making some award-winning whiskeys and still being able to play around and do Dorito stuff and all this stuff. Like that to me is like, it shows like y'all are into it, and y'all are at every event that I've ever been to. Y'all are in the community, but also like able to make such a great product, and I applaud you for it so much. And I can't sing your praises enough. And I'm, at this point, I'm rambling, and that's great. But at the same time, like y'all are doing some amazing stuff, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future with these new corn varietals, with all this new stuff that's coming up. And the Saints Alley shit is amazing, and I can't wait to get more of that. And please distribute a little further down into Texas. That would be great. I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, y'all are doing some amazing stuff, and I hope that everybody that's listening to this has taken something from this. And I mean, anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Not, man. I mean, it's fun for us because you have a huge variety of flavors and experiences that you can have when you start playing with some crazy thing. We have barrels that are super earthy. You've got some that are super fruity. You've got them all over the place. And that's for us, is to kind of let you try all sorts of different flavors that you're not going to see in the typical Kentucky bourbons. Not that those aren't amazing and they don't do an amazing job with those, but they already nailed that flavor profile. They already nailed that. We view kind of our job is to go out there and create other flavors and other experiences for you. So yeah, when you're ready for something a little bit different for you, definitely check out some of our stuff.
All right, so go ahead and plug your socials and everything like that so that everybody can go and check you guys out.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, Ironroot Whiskey. On our website's ironrootrepublic.com. If you Google Ironroot Whiskey, generally we're going to come up. So yeah, just hit up, come out and visit us. We do tours. You guys let us know you're coming. Let us know that you saw this podcast, and we'll, we may pull a sample out of the barrel for you. So
absolutely. I appreciate that, brother. And stay on real fast. I want to talk to you, but if y'all haven't heard of Ironroot, y'all need to get into it. They're trying to get more distribution outside of Texas and the other areas. So please look at them. Let's get them going. I mean, they already won whiskey of the year, so I mean, you can't give them much more accolades. But at the same time, like, these guys are doing some amazing shit, and I really stand behind them. and you thought I was a fanboy for Andalusia, these guys are right next to them. So just understand that. If I could get more of their product, it would be easier. But at the same time, these guys are doing some amazing stuff. And please go follow them on everything they do. And they do some really cool like Instagram reels and stuff like that. So please go follow them and help build them up more than they need to be. Not that they can keep up with production as it is, but y'all need to get working 24 hours a day. You need to be out there running a still right now. Anyway,
we're working. That's why
I'm
I'll
sorry.
fix that. So.
I'm sorry. All right. Until next time, y'all, keep your spirits up.